coming to us from the United States Senate recording studio, so he will be putting you on a national pod. So he is also part of the press conference by way of He is the Media. Mr. Bennett, are you there? Can you hear us?
I can hear you well. Yes, I'm here.
All right. And you can announce your podcast again.
The name of the podcast is A Broad Range of Intelligent People. We're premiering it on Juneteenth, and what better time of week and time of year to feature the holiday than the day that became a holiday.
And of course, you're featuring intelligent people, if you will, from Houston, Texas.
Amen.
So we're grateful for you coming from the Senate recording studio, and we will be excited about your opportunity.
Thank you all very much.
I think it was just about 24 hours ago, I'm Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, and let me say how privileged we are to be in Emancipation Park.
Absolutely.
We thank the Conservatory for their generosity, and we thank them for maintaining the relevancy while we did the building blocks to now establish you as a destination site in a destination district. But it was just about 24 hours ago when I had to get a sense of whether or not this was real. And I wanted to come home today to touch my fellow Houstonians and Texans, and I really mean it, because this has been a long journey. This is where the generations have to talk to each other. I'm very delighted that my colleague, both of us, were on an early flight this morning to the Cornet. He will be at Sam Houston Park, and I am at Emancipation Park. We wanted to be able to reach as many today on this day, so that even the uniqueness of our unity could be reflected in this day and in this historic legislation, journey, vote, and finally a bill. No one would imagine the buzz in social media is, how did it happen? The buzz in social media is the mountain of just tears and overwhelming expressions. And then there's the generational question. What about social justice and racial equity? Now, I wanted to come here to Emancipation Park for a variety of voices, to be able to emphasize that none of us are unmindful of social justice and racial equity.
That's right.
Economically, you fight it every day. Major leadership in a major leading African American organization that is statewide. Your agendas come to me, and I wish I could be on all the time, but every time you sit it, you are talking about social justice issues. But I do think it is important for us to realize the moment, Speaker of the House holding up the first enrollment of the bill. My colleague Barbara Lee's great-grandfather was born 10 years after this document in Galveston, Texas. She herself was born in Texas. Then, of course, I will hold sacred this picture. Opal Lee came not this year, but at least 2.5 years ago. It was so hot, we could barely bear it in Washington, D.C. And she came bearing 1.6, 1.9 million petitions. We must have a Juneteenth holiday. For 12 years, I've been commemorating Juneteenth, filing the bill. Then, of course, we lifted it up as we began to file the national holiday bill. The Senate this year asked if they could take my bill to the Senate, joined by Senator Cornyn, Senator Markey, and my leading it in the House. the obstructionists, the no vote that had knocked us down last year and indicated their intent to do so this year, were not able to overcome the miraculous gathering together of the extra votes that we needed, that the Senate did a procedure that we celebrate called, those legislators know, unanimous consent, a dangerous procedure, because one person could stand up and say, not now. On late Tuesday evening, that bill came out on unanimous consent of the Senate. Only because we had a House bill, and there had been a tradition, and they'd seen me, and they had voted for the House Bill 1320 that had gone to the Senate and now coming back, was the groundwork set for a momentum. I share this with you for the shenanigans of the procedures of the House that I know that some will use and utilize. That evening, I began to work late into the evening of what we could do. We had one day. We had one day. The best that I thought we could do is that we could get a debate and a vote next week. But as I spoke early in the morning Wednesday, we think we can do a rule. We think we can do the rule debate. We think we can then go to the floor and then we can have a vote. But we can't do it, Congresswoman, because the papers have not come from the Senate. I think folk up back here know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Good news to call Senator Cornyn's office for them to run those papers over to the House, letting us do a rule at 12:15 on Wednesday day, then the debate at 2 p.m., and a very close vote on the rule. Because the tradition is that you vote against a rule if you're in an opposing party. We barely made the rule. Most people don't look back on that. They said they were going to vote against the rule. But we made it. And of course, at 5:30, they were kind enough to invite me to be the Speaker Pro Tem to preside over that debate. My friends, this is only a historical perspective because 50 years from now, nobody will understand to give value to that 4-year-old or that teenager about Juneteenth. I'm out getting those Juneteenth sales. Can you imagine? I want to just feel the spirit. Juneteenth sales. We don't even, we got Veterans Day sales. Right. You know you have made it, but in any event. And we debated. And there was all kinds of comments. Can you change the name? On the floor, they were coming to me. Can you change the name? You heard some of that debate. We went to the rule because there were threats that we couldn't get the UC in the House. And we couldn't get a suspension. That means you had to have a certain amount of votes. Can you imagine? We were going and we said we might barely make it by a couple of votes. I made sure when I debated, I looked to the people who were managing there from Pennsylvania. I said, you too are about Juneteenth. Your Union soldiers are about Juneteenth. I had them come over to me and thank me for including them. Wow. These were a diverse group, and they were Republicans. I had fist bumps. So as I sat in that chair and we were counting them, I really thought I was having a different experience. And that number kept going up, kept going up, kept going up to 415 versus 14 that we thought was going to be the other way around, and they voted for Juneteenth. This is America's holiday. This is America's holiday. So I just want to leave you with these words as I yield to those who took the time to come to this place. This place, let it be known, this is a park bought by freed slaves. Yeah. Jack Yates and his colleagues. I think the number is 8 of them that bought this land. This is royalty, and for us, holy ground.
Amen. That's right.
I don't know what stains are in this soil. But Emancipation Park was not named lightly. And they could not buy it prior to that proclamation, Emancipation Proclamation, on June 19, 1865, rendered to us by General Granger. For many of those, Pastor Clemens, Reverend Smith, Dr. Van Bonko, who could not read. So if they come here and just, let me put this up here, they would not have been able to read it. Maybe one person might have tried to show that they could read, but you were not supposed to teach slaves to read. And so he had to read it. He had to read it. I just quickly will say this as he read these numbers and names, but he had to say the most important, that you are no longer property. You are no longer slaves. You will be employer and employee.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how many people understood those words, but I can assure you they welcomed them, but they also made way to move down Emancipation Trail. They were leaving this place because they were free. Now, there was some delay in how many states were going to actually enforce it, but they were free. We had to iron out some difficulties till we got the 13th Amendment propelled. That's the message I want to give you. Propelled by 1865, and that proclamation propelled the United States Congress to pass the 13th Amendment in December 1865. They were free. So let me just give you these words as I yield. Juneteenth has made real to the last persons living under the system of chattel slavery of human bondage the prophetic words of President Abraham Lincoln, delivered November 19, 1863 at Gettysburg, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and the government of the people, by the people, for the people, should not perish from the earth. It should give us great inspiration, no matter what color we are, that this day reflects that when you give freedom, you do not perish. And it might be, as it is written in Ecclesiastes 3:1, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. I think the coming together of this, as the president landed from Geneva, to be able to come to organize people as far away as Galveston and Conroe. The Thomas family was there. Authors were there. Opal Lee, 94 years old, was able to make it. And we did call the name of the late Representative Al Edwards.
Amen. Amen.
Of his history. And so, I am here to say, we would not let this day pass without touching, when we'll go outside, this soil. We want Houstonians and Texans to know that this is the first time in the history of the United States that you have a holiday that is a federal holiday that will now expand across America. Corporate America will follow shortly because the people that they employ, or the stockholders who are diverse, will ask the question, are you not going to honor the slaves and their freedom? A little child will ask, what is Juneteenth in 2025? And someone will be able to say, America had a brutal history of slavery, but yet on this day, we were able to be free. Freedom, as the Vice President said. Remember the President's words? That he may do a lot of things in his 4 years, but he may be known for this day, yesterday, the signing of the Juneteenth. Not to be the end, not to be a substitute,
That's right.
but only to be a propeller. So I ask, there we go. That's how national it is. Anybody seen us on the front page of the Wall Street Journal? On the front page of the Wall Street Journal. I'm not ignoring our other periodicals, but on the Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal. As you know, conservative in opinion. Could have just ignored us. But you all are too powerful. Your history, the economic engine of slavery, was too powerful to ignore. With that, if you would allow me to bring up the president of the Texas Black Democrats, Coalition of Black Democrats, I would appreciate if Professor Earl Robinson would come forward at this time.
Thank you, Congresswoman. You know, some people don't understand the need to be rooted in history, because you can't grow anything without roots in the dirt. And when you called to say we would meet at Emancipation Park, I understood why you were coming home to this hallowed ground. There's an intertwining to the pastors. I don't pretend to be a pastor. I went to Sunday school, no. And somewhere in the good books it says the last shall be first. They say slaves in Texas were the last. If I could go back and talk to them, they would correct the record.
Yeah.
Granger may have got here late, but they figured out how to communicate, how to steal away, how to cross the water, make their way north to freedom. So I know they knew. And they knew that all they had to do was just wait for the word to come that they had already known. I want to thank the Congresswoman. I know, Reverend Clemens, you're going to say something. But I started in politics as a young person in college on Capitol Hill as an intern. And I saw the shot, Congresswoman, of you banging the gavel. If you haven't been into the House chamber, it's not as big as it looks on TV, but the speaker's podium is high. And it meant something in the history of the 18th Congressional District. And the people we have sent to Congress and the things they have done to see our representative, Sheila Jackson Lee, with the speaker's gavel in her hand. They won't forget, Congresswoman. They won't forget. We and this event are evidence of it. That we remember Yates. We remember this ground. We remember what Al Edwards did and the fight he made. And when folks celebrate Juneteenth going forward, it's because a few folk in Texas had the courage to make it a holiday in Texas when nobody believed it could, when we had monuments of Confederates on the Capitol ground. That's right. And then it was a congresswoman from Texas to pass that bill. Folk don't think it was that moment, but they don't remember all the years you filed it, all the years you fought, and all the time it came up short because the other folk weren't ready to get it. And Juneteenth sets us into, and I'm glad you mentioned it, 13th, 14th, 15th, and it brings us to modern time. If our kids are going to remember, you can't deny them the truth in history in school. That's right. If our kids are to carry on the legacy, you can't take away their right to vote. Emancipation is a manifestation and a celebration of the Declaration of Independence. We're all created equal, and we want to live in a land where it's run by the people, for the people, and the only way you can do that, Congresswoman, is we all have to have the right to vote. And so the folks who are trying to take away our right to vote, whether they understand it or not, and I think they do, they're trying to take us to a place before we could even enjoy the words from Lincoln, the proclamation, the Juneteenth, and the struggle we've come so far. So this is a exclamation point on one paragraph in history. We still got a lot of work to do to keep writing in that book, but with good people like you in the Capitol in Washington, today is yesterday and today is a pretty special day, and we'll keep building on it in America. So thank you, Congresswoman. Let me just give you a little baby hug. Thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you, Professor Carroll, as well, distinguished professor at Texas Southern University. And let me just say that we are infused with Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. Frederick Douglass challenged whether we had been made free and whether we had a recognition of that. And Abraham Lincoln said, "Our house divided cannot stand against itself." And so we seek to do that. We have a brief presentation by a really wonderful historian, storyteller, and she knows that she can tell it, so she's going to tell it very briefly, but she knows the significance, she lives it. She has really lived Juneteenth through Galveston and traveled, and that is Naomi Carrier.
Good morning.
Good evening.
That's how excited I am. I'm still thinking this morning. I want to thank the Congresswoman for involving me in this tremendous, passionate initiative. Because on yesterday, the legislator came to reckoning with American history. American history was reckoned with via this acceptance of Juneteenth as a federal holiday. And what does emancipation mean? It means liberation. It means it means that you are no longer legally bound to be commodified. As the Congresswoman said, slavery was the cornerstone of capitalism in America. And so we want to look at this legislation and what does it mean for us. This is an opportunity to enhance American history, to correct some American and Texas history. But what is that going to do? At the Texas Center for African American Living History, which is a nonprofit for public education, for 30 years now we have tried to educate the public that slavery was real. I have books and reenactments and stories, but then why? Because in order to help people to preserve and to respect our history, they have to understand it.
That's right.
And you cannot understand anything you have not been taught.
That's right. That's right.
The Emancipation National Historic Trail, which was sponsored by our Congresswoman,
Right.
as is, I won't go into telling you how in 2017 I rode up and down 45, chronicling the existence of 40 historic sites that have Texas historical markers. That's just the 40 that have markers. We're not talking about the hundreds that do not have markers. But we have submitted these to the National Park Service, who is now doing the trail, and we know that these historic sites will be studied and restudied so that they can begin to contribute to the economic development of the communities where they are. And that is the purpose of the Emancipation National Historic Trail, to tell our story, to put us in our proper place, and then to use these stories to heal our people. That is the logical culmination of this trail. Thank you, Congresswoman.
Thank you. Allow us to continue to tell our story. We are telling it quickly because we want to hear from all of you. And so, Dr. Von Backel, would you come representing Independence Heights? And as well, you bring a different perspective. And here we are to say a holiday that directly tells America slaves were held, slaves were brutalized, but slaves were emancipated, liberated, and they are free. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for inviting me to celebrate with you. I am a historian, and I've been working with Tanya DeBose in the historic black town of Independence Heights to document the stories of people who came from Wharton County, from Brazoria County, who left the plantations where their parents and grandparents were enslaved and formed the first black town in Texas. These stories are embedded in the landscape, but without narrating them, without marking them, without a holiday to give voice to this history, we live in this town together and walk through these landscapes without really understanding each other. So this is an incredible opportunity for us to, on a national level, acknowledge the history of slavery and also to amplify the stories of freedom. So I'm delighted to be here and celebrating with you. Thank you.
Tell the stories of freedom. I'm going to, Reverend Clemens, you're going to close, so I hope you know that, so please be prepared. But to tell the stories of freedom, and I'm going to call on Reverend Smith, who I thought was going to have a very young man with him today, 3-year-old, but that young man, you'll be able to tell. With all the emotion that you spoke to me today and yesterday in your words, you'll be able to tell that young man, not only is he free, but he has a day that he can elevate and pay honor to those who are not here with us anymore.
Absolutely.
Reverend Smith.
Well, bless you, New Bethlehem Missionary Baptist Church. It is just an honor even to be here. Congresswoman called me about an hour before, and I had to be here for all of the work that she has done on behalf of the United States of America and our nation. I told her this is something that will be forever be historic. This will go down in history until Jesus comes back. This is something that has never ever been done before. And the hard work and the favor and the grace that God has given her to make this happen. 415 against and 14 opposed. And to hear the President of the United States of America say that when I leave office, I will be remembered and honored as signing this bill. And for this remembrance, to hear the President of the United States make that statement says a lot. And so we're just grateful for her efforts and all of the hard work that she has done. And we need to continue to move forward. This is not a stopping point, but this is a beginning. Amen. Genesis. God bless you and God keep you.
Keep you back. Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. Let me now ask, my lectures will be coming towards the end. Let me now ask my later recent grandmother, and she's been on the battlefield for fighting for working people. What does it mean that we get? I want everybody to know there was nobody in Washington. They got a holiday, and they were all learning about Juneteenth in a matter of 24 hours. My federal building, they were learning about Juneteenth, and as I said, I expect this to go across America, just like labor fought for years for the Martin Luther King holiday. 38 years later, here we are with Juneteenth. Madam Cole, Cynthia.
Good afternoon, and I will be brief, Congresswoman. I love her, I adore her, and her tenacity, and all those that have supported and brought us to this point. But don't you want to know how you gonna tell that story? I got a brand new grandbaby. I had one, I got two, and I'm excited about that because I can tell the story. Born in Texas. What does that mean? It means that you understand. What did the storyteller say? Emancipation means that you are free. You are no longer in bondage. Tell the story, people. Tell the story how you can heal and love people who may not look like you beside you now, because we are all free. Imagine how strong we can become. Imagine how strong we have become. As we move forward, I'm excited. I can't wait to tell the story to my grandbabies, my great-grandbabies, and however many other people who want to hear it, about how Texas had to take a stand, how tenacity moved us forward, and how, guess what? Today, we are stronger because of it.
Let me now bring forward our council member who has really protected and nurtured this district. We've worked on many issues together, and in working on many issues together, we've had many successes and we have challenges, but we're never giving up. And in her district, she has this historic and outstanding land that was purchased, and it's hallowed ground by 8 freed slaves after the Emancipation Proclamation in 1865. Councilmember Carolyn Evans.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I am Councilmember Carolyn Evans Shabazz, the proud council member for District D, where we are, which I call the District of Destination. It's always a pleasure to stand with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Because one thing you know is either you are in a fight or you have just finished and won a fight. One of many, many fights. And so I'm very, very grateful that she did give me a call. I was prepared to move home. But when the Congresswoman calls, you know that it's a very important occasion. And so I'm deeply honored because I attended Jack Yates High School, which is the only Jack Yates High School in the United States of America. And so it is certainly a beacon in the 3rd Ward community. But I want to say just a couple of things. One is that we are fighting now because the history books don't want to yield our history. But it is events such as this that will keep our history alive. We will be the history books for our own children. And I also want to put the legislators on notice. While you are attempting to suppress our votes, you are really, really creating a problem for yourselves. Because I know that when you tell me I can't, I will show you that I can. So this is just a moment that will move into a movement. Because certainly there are some things that must be addressed. But we will move on and make sure that God is ahead of us. Because everything is in His timing. I trust Him, and I know that we will be victorious. Thank you.
Thank you. She comes from the territory of Barbara Jordan and Mickey Leland. She comes from the territory where free slaves found their way from Galveston, and where there is a deep history in 5th Ward, Texas, the Nickel. And so she cares about children. And as I thought about this, Reverend Clemens, this holiday, I wanted to then give educators their excuse. We've got holidays they have to explain. What is Memorial Day? No, it's not sales. It's about the fallen. What is Veterans Day? It is about those who put on the uniform. And what are other holidays with names? Only 11 of them. They are reasons to discuss and educate. And now the Juneteenth, National Independence Day, emancipation, liberation, and freedom will be a reason to talk to children of all backgrounds. With teachers being released.
That's right.
Because it's Juneteenth week.
That's right.
We have to teach what Juneteenth is. And we're teaching to all the little boys and girls as they go home to mom and dad and say, I learned about Juneteenth with Johnny. Johnny doesn't look like you. So she cares for children, and that is, of course, Kathy Buford Daniels, trustee for HISD.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I am Kathy Buford Daniels, HISD trustee, but I come before you because I'm so emotional. I want to thank number one, number two, actually number one, and one. Number one, Al Edwards, a Wheatley graduate. Thank you, Al, for being consistent and persistent. Number two, thank you, Senator Miles, for seeing if there were statues and artifacts down at the state capitol that depicted slavery and wrote a bill and insisted on a committee to have that removed. Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you, Congresswoman, for staying the course. This little lady is all over the place, but you stayed the course. Take this day because of your persistence and insistence. Those of us that will appreciate this holiday, this day going forward, take that time to educate your children about what Juneteenth is. Because the legislators, as someone said, took it out of the classroom. Sit at home, drink your red sodas, eat your barbecue, and have the stories and tell them what Juneteenth means to all of us. I remember in the store a couple of years ago, I'm letting this go. And I was shopping on one rack, on one row, and I heard a little girl ask her mother, what holiday is coming up? And her mother said, 4th of July. She said, no, we got Juneteenth. Her mother, who didn't look like us, said, we don't celebrate that day. Thank you.
Unifying and healing. Unifying and healing. I can feel it right now. Unifying and healing. That's our pronouncement of Juneteenth today.
That's right.
Amen.
That's right.
So I want to make sure that I am acknowledging, he's coming up, but I didn't know if there's anybody here. But, okay. I know I have him.
Don't you see everybody?
Yeah. Because you elevate up. Thank you. I didn't know there was a young lady here, so representing.
So your name?
I'm Kendra London. I'm the founder of Our African Family.
I'm delighted to have you here. Thank you so very much. Thank you. And let me make sure I say the last name.
Kendra London.
Kendrick London. Thank you so very much. Well, let me get the conservancy first. And thank you for your courtesies. We're going to turn this into, with Juneteenth as a national holiday, I'm giving you a year to be able to have something here that no one, that CNN, that MSNBC, the Wall Street Journal,
That's right.
and everybody will be on this ground.
That's right.
On that national federal holiday. Come right here. Come right here.
I am super excited.
Yes, Lord.
Every chance I get, I acknowledge the fact that you did the trail. Now I can say the trail, and you got the chance to, welcome the opportunity for everybody to hear about Juneteenth by making it a national holiday. I'm so grateful for that.
Yes, Lord.
So Juneteenth, 149 years this year, we'll be celebrating at the historic Emancipation Park, June 19th. And Congresswoman, I want you to know June 20th, 2021, we're starting to plan for the next year.
All right.
All the work you do and for making sure people understand not about Juneteenth, but just about this Emancipation Park. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, there's the clarion call. It is the clarion call, and as well, we are calling people from all racial backgrounds.
Yes.
You got a federal holiday.
Yes.
You're going to say you do celebrate it. You do celebrate it. That's what we're all about. Representative Reynolds was in Washington this week.
Yes.
And he was very busy because we realized that as the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment was propelled from the announcement, let's get putting on and off, this announcement of the proclamation, Emancipation Proclamation 1865, and it propelled those amendments, those constitutional amendments.
Yes.
This week we were engaged with people whose minds were beginning to change on George Floyd, on the voting law.
Yes.
People were beginning to ask the question about H.R. 40, the Commission to Study Slavery and Develop Reparation Proposals. We were being propelled.
That's right.
I was getting fist bumps from people from around the country, representatives who were on the other side of the aisle, my Republican friends. I thanked them. They were thanking me as they voted. But I will be there again next week talking about what we need to propel. And Representative Reynolds was propelling voting rights. and the challenge of voting rights across America. And he was meeting with those who were beginning to think differently in the Senate, the House, and meeting with many people. That's what equals the Juneteenth National Independence Day. It is when all people begin to believe and understand who we are and who we need to be as a country. Representative Ron Reynolds.
Thank you, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. I was honored to be there and a part of history. And I thought and reflected upon words that I heard before, but it meant more this time. When I heard Dr. King once say, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And to be there and to be on the Hill, to advocate for voting rights and the passage of H.R. 1 and H.R. 4, and then while we're there with the Texas delegation, to hear Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee says that the Senate is taking it up today, and then they passed it, and then to hear her say, I'm going to have to deviate because I'm going to have to move it forward to expedite this in the House tomorrow, and to be there to witness it. I think sometimes you take for granted something that's in your backyard. You will marvel at something that is far away. Oh, you know, such and such and such and such. You know, I wasn't there to be witness and work with our late Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, but when this passed, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, I knew that she was smiling from heaven, just as my former colleague Al Levin. And I was so grateful that Miss Opal Lee was there to witness it in her lifetime. And I just want everyone to know that this lady right here is one of the hardest, most working, most dedicated public servants this side of heaven. And we're going to give you the applause. You can smell your flowers. And let me just say this as I close. This was a culmination of many years of hard work, dedication, perseverance, when people said it won't be done. And Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, this is going to propel us to pass your H.R. 40, to study reparations, because first you get the holiday, and then as people understand the significance of slave and the free labor that our forefathers, whose shoulders that we stand on, who paved the way for this America that we have, it is time for us to own up to our history. And H.R. 40, which you're the author of, that is the next milestone that I believe that you will accomplish. So thank you for your hard work. May God continue to bless you and this Congress of the United States of America. Thank you.
As I said, Reverend Harvey Clemens in New Pleasant Hill Baptist Church, his church is a historic church. Reverend, I'm going to let you have the last word. I'm going to close and bring you up here because that church is home.
1925.
1925. And
That's
so,
all that matters.
that's all right.
Your school board member.
You were 4 years after the tragedy of Tulsa and Greenwood. And so we have had these mountains and valleys. I heard someone say today that African Americans are enormously patriotic. This does not reflect negatively on others, but we say that to say that then if we are responding to their history, let us respond because we are caring Americans. Because in fact, everything that we've been asked to do from every world war, or every war, the African American community has done so. And when I think of Juneteenth, when we think of Dr. Martin Luther King, we think of that march, we think of the immediacy of the Civil Rights Act.
That's right.
Not to be undermined. We think of that era when we thought we were free, but we were in the 20th century.
That's right.
And we had to get what we had to get done. And we had to get to vote, and we had to get people elected. But when we talk about Juneteenth, we can draw in those who are different from us to learn the depth of our history, involvement, and the impact that we as black people, who are descendants of enslaved Africans, had on America. And in us doing that, my colleague, Senator Cornyn, was willing to support that legislation, and others, diverse, a president diverse, was willing to say we need that holiday because we want America to come together. So I want to close. We have often quoted him. He was taken too early, and he was taken, unfortunately, because of race. And I want us to get to a point that that is not the case. So I want to put on the table, Juneteenth will propel a resolution and final vote on the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. That it will put on the table a final vote on the John Robert Lewis Voter Enhancement Bill and H.R. 1. I want to put on the table that the President's American Job Plan that will enhance neighborhoods and be able to develop communities will be voted on. I want to put on the table the American Family Plan that President Biden sees as lifting all of America's votes. I want to put on the table the lack of fear in having a commission stood up by Congress to listen to people around America as to what slavery meant and the impact that it has even today. Why should we be afraid? So here are his words. And the truth is, as President Lincoln recognized, that slavery is America's original sin, a crime against nature and humanity, so horrific and understood that the Almighty gave to both North and South this terrible war, and will it continue until all the wealth piled by the bondsmen, 250 years of unrequited toil, shall be sunk, and until every drop of blood drawn with the lash shall be paid by another drawn with the sword. And if that happened, Lincoln told his countrymen, that as was said 3,000 years ago, so still it must be said, the judgments of the Lord are true, and the righteous altogether. He thought it was right for us to heal and repair. He thought it was right to acknowledge how much was given. This is not an angry bill. This wasn't passed in anger. There were support and speeches supporting us on both sides of the aisle. Good news. And the vote was an overwhelming vote. I hope America sees that we did come together and not on anything shallow. And I hope America takes the opportunity tomorrow, when that day is June 19th, and that they will come together, finding spiritual grounding to support what the sense of this bill, Senate and House, is the Juneteenth National Independence Day. I welcome Reverend Clinton right now.
Thank you, Congresswoman Lee. I want to begin, first of all, by thanking Almighty God for his many promises. Everett R. Storm, in his 27th reading of the Bible, took the time to count all of the promises of God. His counting may be accurate or inaccurate, but he counted 7,849 promises that God made, and all of them were yes, stamped with amen by Christ. And one of those promises, I don't know whether Storm was correct, but one of those promises that God made is that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us.
Yes. Amen.
And if you ever had a reason to doubt that, you don't anymore. After you saw what God did to make this bill possible, in a time when our nation is more partisan than it has ever been.
Say that.
For her, our congressperson, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee of the 18th Congressional District, community.
Yes, sir.
First fiddle by the wonderful, brilliant mind of Barbara Jordan. Mickey Leland died trying to feed people around the world.
That's right.
Never ever have I been so proud of the leadership in the 18th Congressional District than I was other night when I saw our congressperson of the 18th Congressional District. This holiday of emancipation celebration.
Yes, yes.
We have been blessed in the 18th Congressional District to have great leadership.
Amen.
Every time we have a primary or election, there are those who would question whether our congressional leadership in the 18th Congressional District is stale.
Yes, yes, that's right.
There is no need now to question seniority.
That's right.
Because this would not have happened if it had not been for the fact that we had a representative that had seniority,
That's right.
that had brilliance, and the ability to be able to pull people together
That's it. That's right.
for a purpose such as this. Now, we should celebrate.
Yes.
It is appropriate. But the message was that we were free from a form of slavery. There are many forms of slavery.
That's right. Say that again.
Freedom is never permanent.
That's right.
It must be fought for every day.
Wow. That's deep.
All right. Good word.
And what makes me celebrate this day all the more is the fact that God has promised that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us, and we have a congressional leader who believes that, and God has demonstrated. And so now I face fighting the challenges of economic depression, the disparities in education and health, voters' right suppression. I face now these new challenges with new optimism.
Yes.
That we have leadership in place,
That's right.
and we have a broad and sit high and look right. Thank you so very much.
We asked our friends in the media to bear with us one moment. We want to go to the soil here to acknowledge this dirt that was purchased as the first park by ex-slaves. So we don't normally ask, but we're going to march out this way, and we'll have just right here on the grass. We are going to see who has the most resounding voice. We're going to sing one verse of Lift Every Voice. You all will find it on your phone.
Certainly. I sing in the key of